I'd like to take the opportunity during the course of this video to talk about something very interesting. What you're looking at is a Franklin Computer Spelling Ace electronic spelling assistant. The premise and concept behind this thing is very simple. If you turn it on and enter a word whose spelling you are uncertain of, or you enter a word with a wildcard, this thing will search its electronic memory and either try to find the correct spelling of the word that you entered, or it will find words that have some of the same letters in them based on the wildcard pattern that you entered. Now, this was something that I picked up from the Goodwill, and while it might make a good gift for Bizarre Furhead, and assuming he can spell well enough to not completely stump this thing, that is not actually why I picked up this item. Instead, I picked this item up because it seems that a lot of these things which surface at the Goodwill have a very curious and unfortunate thing that ends up happening to them. I don't know why. I don't know if people are looking for batteries or component parts or just what it is they're after. But little things like this and pocket calculators and little tiny, I have one of these somewhere else down here, a little tiny computer that you punch in the area in which you're located, and it searches its memory bank to find things like tourist attractions, restaurants, rest stops, things like that on the freeways and highways that might be near you. But it doesn't matter what these little things are. People rip them apart, sometimes viciously, even when they're brand new in their packaging. I've seen this happen at the Goodwill. They just rip these devices apart and leave a few of the ruined remains behind. Sometimes they take things like the rubber keypads, which, sort of, kind of could make sense if you need the little conductive dots that are on the bottom and you don't know about the trick of being able to rub a graphite pencil on the bottom of a dead contact pad in such an application in order to renew it. So I have no idea what happens to these things, but people rip them up. And I just decided that I couldn't leave this thing there, so I went ahead and picked it up, especially after I discovered that it happened to power on. Now it goes ahead and it says on its little screen here, ready for word. So what you can do is you can enter a word that you're looking for. I'm just going to start out by demonstrating this thing's word-finding capabilities by entering something that will almost certainly not be in its electronic memory here. Let's see if we can zoom in on this so you can get a better look at it. And then I'll go ahead and tell it to search. And as you can see here in just a moment, it will go ahead and search. It even has a little progress indicator. And then it will show you the words that it came up with. And as you can see, there are quite a few different possibilities here. And that's the end of the list. So you can clear it and try it again. You can enter a word that's spelled correctly, and if there's an exact match for it, it shows up on the display. And that's the only particular entry in this case. Now, Franklin Computer Corporation certainly has a very interesting history. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the company, Franklin Computer got its start as a manufacturer of cloned Apple II personal computers back in the early 1980s. And these weren't just clones in terms of hardware. They went so far as to blatantly copy Apple's ROM code, making the claim that because there was no human-readable form of this code published, that they could legally copy it, as copyright law did not apply. Well, as you can imagine, Apple Computer sued them, and initially Franklin Computer was victorious, but then the decision was reversed by another court, and Apple eventually managed to force Franklin Computer out of the Apple II cloning market. There were other companies at the time that also cloned the Apple II hardware, such as VTech with their Laser 128 system. You'd know VTech better today as a manufacturer of cordless phones and kids' toys. Amazingly, Franklin Computer is still around, and their logo has changed. Well, it hasn't changed at all since the days when this thing would have been manufactured probably in the late 1980s or early 1990s. Franklin Computer these days is known as Franklin Electronic Publishing, and after their exit from the computer business, they went into the business of manufacturing things like portable dictionaries, language translators, all that sort of thing. To my utter amazement, they have a very comprehensive archive of user's manuals on their website, although the user's manual for this thing seems to refer to a later revision with the same model number, as instead of a 16-segment liquid crystal display as used on this one, the newer model has a couple of word games built in, and it also appears to use a dot matrix display instead of the already mentioned 16-segment liquid crystal display on this model. All that's very interesting, but it's not the reason for this particular video. Even more interesting is what you see when you flip this unit over. I don't know if you can actually see it on the camera, maybe it'll help if I turn the light on, but this unit actually has an ISBN number printed on it. I tried to look it up online, and I couldn't actually find anything that matched it, nor could I find a particularly satisfactory way to search for ISBN numbers online. So if you happen to know of one, I would certainly appreciate knowing about it in the comments. But if it's been a while since this video's been posted and you're just now watching it, by all means check the other comments first, because at that point someone has probably answered my question. Now, as you can see, this little thing is in excellent working condition, and that's where things take a turn for the interesting. First, I want to go ahead and show you something here. If we look over on the computer monitor, zoom in on that, you can see a video from fellow YouTuber V Westlife where he demonstrates a set of allegedly 14-year-old Duracell batteries still working perfectly in a General Electric AM/FM radio. Well, guess what, folks? I think I've got him beat. Now, this most certainly is not any sort of contest, which is probably a good thing, as if it were, it would be an extremely cheesy one. But what I'm about to show you, well, if you don't believe in miracles, you might after this. Let's go ahead and turn this thing over and pop the battery compartment lid off of it. You can see there are 4 Duracell batteries in there. And if I bring it up to the camera, you can see that those batteries have a best if installed by date of July 92. That's July 1992. There are people who watch videos on this channel pretty regularly who weren't even alive in 1992. These batteries are 21 years as of the making of this video past their best if installed by date, and yet they still seem to be working perfectly. They also don't seem to have leaked, which is an unexplainable miracle in this regard. I'm kind of on the fence about miracles myself, but I most certainly believe that there are things that science doesn't always have a really good answer for. And while these batteries probably wouldn't have to be very strong in order to power this little unit, because I can't imagine it using very much electrical energy, let's just go ahead and see how strong they happen to be. Go ahead and get the multimeter out here and turn it on. And then I'll go ahead and zoom in so you can just see what's going on here. Hopefully you can actually see the display on it. It wouldn't have killed Radio Shack to put a stand on that thing. But they didn't do it, and they didn't ask me about it, so their loss, I guess. Alright, let's see if I can actually do this on camera. Come on. 1.146 volts in that one, so not real strong, but definitely hanging in there. And let's see about this one. About the same. So they've all run down pretty equally so far. Go ahead and try this one real quick, but I don't expect it's going to be majorly different from any of the others. Nope, it's pretty much in line. And even if by this point you think I happen to be faking you out, well, guess what? I've got a good opportunity for another little demonstration here. This, just so you see that none of this is subject to the magic of video editing. I'll even leave the battery door off. I'll turn this thing on, and then I'll demonstrate the wildcard search capability that I forgot about earlier. So you can enter a part of a word, and then you can enter either a question mark or a dash. Now, because I don't have the proper instructions for this thing, I really don't know what the difference is, but if I go ahead and enter the dash and tell it to search, it will find a couple of different words. You would probably have to be a viewer of The Weasel Show to understand the humor in what it is that I'm doing right now. But suffice it to say, there is certainly something of a double meaning to it. And so now you see how this little thing works, and some absolutely amazing batteries. I do think I'll go ahead and leave these in here just to see how long they'll last, but I'm going to be keeping a very careful eye on them, as they are so far past being on even borrowed time that it's not funny. Now, when I mentioned this the other day on The Weasel Show, V Westlife suggested, apparently being aware of the history of Franklin Computer, that this thing might use a 6502 processor. I've got my doubts. Fortunately, I also have a golden screwdriver. Here's the circuit board that makes everything work. At first glance, I'm pretty impressed by the build quality. It appears that all of the integrated circuits were most probably installed by machine, but some of the smaller components, such as these diodes right here, appear as though they may have been hand soldered. The work isn't bad, but it's certainly a lot sloppier than anything seen on the integrated circuits. Now, if you have one of these and you decide to take it apart, obviously the precautions about electrostatic discharge potentially frying things would apply strongly. Likewise, you want to be careful. Although it was not particularly difficult to get this unit apart, there were, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws that held it together, and the only thing that escaped while I was working on it were these little black discs that seemed to be some kind of shim around the actual screw holes. I'm not sure what their purpose is, but you will want to make sure that they are put back. And of course, as I said, handling things carefully to avoid the possibility of electrostatic discharge causing problems is a very good idea, because most of the integrated circuitry in this thing appears to be of a custom nature. However, the question about the microcontroller in use has certainly been answered. It is an ST Microelectronics Z80A microcontroller that is in use inside this unit. They have opted to use a CMOS fabrication version of that particular microcontroller, probably to cut down on power consumption. Over here is a static RAM IC from UMC Semiconductor, and then there is a chip over here indicated as being manufactured by NEC of Japan. It is only marked Franklin, so I suppose that it is probably maybe the word module for the built-in dictionary. The large IC took a little bit of research. It was manufactured by Plessey Semiconductor. Plessey Company was a British concern that was in a lot of electrical and industrial businesses. They have a tremendous history behind them. They've manufactured all kinds of things, from electronic and electrical devices to stuff for the military, and even rarely an IBM personal system to power supply. Although the original Plessey Company is long since defunct and has been merged into other companies, and probably very little of it remains to this day, the Plessey Semiconductor division has actually reincorporated and is still around today after having gone through several hands as well. I don't know what that large IC is used for. It has a lot of traces that appear to go to the display. However, something that large, I would have expected it to be, well, more significant than just a simple display driver. It is marked as an MVA 5052. Now, the date codes on all the parts inside this unit confirm my thoughts about the time of its manufacture. It was put together sometime in either late 1988 or early 1989, as the date codes on the parts are from around the 40th week of 1988. So that's pretty much everything there is to say about the insides of this particular unit, and just about everything on the outside of it as well. Thank you for watching, and by all means feel free to leave a comment if you have one, especially if you might happen to have some information about the integrated circuits used in this particular piece of equipment.